13 minutes before 7 here on Morning Live, the Portfolio Committee on Police is today holding a public hearing on the current rural safety strategy of the South African Police Service. The committee says communities in outlying and deep rural areas should be the eyes and ears of the law enforcement agencies to ensure that violent and contact crime is brought down. The chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Police is Francois Beukman, and he joins us now from our Cape Town studios. Francois, thank you very, very much for joining us and welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Leanne, and good morning to the viewers.
Explain to us the specific focus on rural areas.
Well, rural areas is very important in terms of the safety strategy of the South African Police. There's three reasons why the Portfolio Committee is having this public hearing today. One is that the current rural strategy has been in place since 2011. Now, SABC is doing a review of that strategy, and we want to hear today what is the plans to enhance and improve the strategy. Secondly, the National Development Plan has made clear recommendations with regard to the implementation of the rural safety strategy. And thirdly, if one analyses the recent crime statistics for 2017-2018, there are certain concerns. For instance, stock theft is up 7.8% in the country. We've also seen a spate of vigilante killings in certain provinces, Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, and we want to have an assurance from National Police Management that they are on top of the situation, but will also ensure that the new safety strategy for rural areas is talking to the current challenges in the country.
Yeah. One thing I know there's a big emphasis on is community involvement, and saying that it's very important, but a lot of mob justice, unfortunately, takes place in these local communities as well, who feel the police are not protecting them and they're not doing a good enough job. So I suppose the question is, you know, what involvement do you want, and how do you expect them to sort of be your eyes on the ground when they do tip police off and yet nothing is done about it?
Well, Leanne, of the current 1,146 police stations in South Africa, 433 are classified as rural, and then 453 is classified as semi-rural. So it involves a huge number of precincts and, of course, millions of people. The current structure that coordinates the rural safety strategy is located in the National Operational and Intelligence structure, the national joints. Now, this structure is also duplicated at provincial and local level. And for the Portfolio Committee today, we will especially focus what is the involvement of the community policing forums, the local safety forums, the farm watches, the workers' committees, the street committees in these rural areas, whether they are indeed involved. Because if you analyze the current strategy, there's three lacunas that we've identified. The one is the vast areas that's been covered by the South African Police. Furthermore, some of these structures are not operating effectively. A lot of the meetings are not taking place. Some of the stakeholders are not participating. And there's also the issue of a lack of credible and reliable information. There's clearly underreporting in some of the rural areas. Yeah. So the involvement of the local population is critical. So we will also focus on what is station commanders doing in the rural stations to ensure that they've got the community on board.
Yeah. When we talk about resources and some of these SAPS stations and the SAPS themselves under-resourced when it comes to rural safety, how will you determine which would be the priority stations?
Well, once again, the crime statistics is an important factor, but one must also look at the vastness of areas. One must look at population trends and also what is the general nature of crime in the specific areas. But being more specific, vehicles is quite critical for rural areas, and we will have to look at the police vehicle ratio, the availability of vehicles, but also then the issue of communications, because the National Development Plan is very clear. Because of the vastness of rural areas, special attention should be given to communication and technology as multipliers in terms of fighting crime. And so the question is, your normal rural station, do they've got the vehicles, do they've got the manpower, but also the communication tools and also the necessary technology to ensure that they can spread their thin resources to deal with crime effectively.
I want to take a specific example. I mean, we look at Vlakfontein, for instance, the incident there where 7 people were murdered. There were 7 bodies that were in a house buried under sand, and they'd been there for quite some time. And I mean, this I think is a semi-rural area, if I'm not mistaken. But only once the bodies were decomposed did community members actually become aware of the situation. One also seems that the poorest communities are the most vulnerable, and the police are actually doing nothing there.
No, I mean, it's a priority for, I think, for the Portfolio Committee on Police that all areas in South Africa is given the necessary police resources, and especially rural areas and semi-rural areas. But once again, it depends also on the cooperation between the police and the local population, but also the issue of intelligence-led policing. We think that the role of crime intelligence is key, and your cluster and local stations should be part of that plan to ensure that any big event that happens, or if there's crime trends, that should be reported to the relevant divisions within the South African police to ensure that incidents that can be properly policed.
I want to talk a little bit about some of the organizations that have been invited, and one specifically is the African Farmers Association of South Africa, also Agri South Africa, and the Congress of South African Trade Unions. They're going to be making submissions. I can only imagine that the issue of farm murders is going to come up. And I'm not only referring to white farmers that are being affected by this. We're also seeing that workers are being murdered, black farmers themselves are being murdered. And yet this is a topic that, I don't know, it seems to be ignored by the police. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is the feeling among South Africans. Let's address farm murders. Is this going to be a big topic of discussion as well?
Well, I think all murders is a concern. We had, for the first time in the history of the country, more than 20,000 murders last year in South Africa. So from a prevention, from a visible policing point of view, it's quite critical that the proper strategy is in place. With regard to farm or rural murders on farms or small holdings, in terms of the 2017-18 statistics, there was 62 murders, and that includes workers, foremen, owners, and a whole range of inhabitants of farm areas. So it's a huge concern, and organized agriculture is part of the lobby group that participates in the national joints or the national operational intelligence structure. So they are there. But I think part of our meeting today is also to engage with them. Are they satisfied with the quality of the interaction? Do they get the necessary support from local stations? Because the National Development Plan is also very clear. There must be adequate support from rural stations to farm communities, workers and owners. So that is an important area we'll focus on. But also the issue of visible policing. Regular policing patrols is critical. But linked to that in the farm areas is the issue of multiplying the police capacity. And that's where the whole issue of police reservists come in. And we will also focus on that. What is the plan of the South African police to deal with the extension of the police reservists in the rural areas? There's currently only about 8,000 police reservists in the country, and we want to ensure that police reservists are available, and there's also cooperation from the whole spread of communities in the local and farming communities participating in these structures.
Okay. Unions came into studio, I think it was on Monday, if I'm not mistaken. We were tackling the issue of suicides within the police force and the fact that a lot of your members just do not get the adequate help when it comes to emotional support, psychological debriefing. Is this also going to be spoken about? I know that we keep focusing on how bad the crime rate is and what police are doing about it, but how are the police themselves being helped? And perhaps this can also help them do their job better. What is your response to this?
No, the issue of femicide, suicide of police members is a huge concern to us, because it really speaks to the pressure on which members are, whether it's personal or operational. And we think there should be urgent attention be given to it on a regular basis by the relevant provincial commissioners as well as unit commissioners. But also, I think that is an issue that station commanders must also monitor. The individual members in their precinct to ensure that they're aware of any risk factors that may lead to depression or maybe conduct that might be abnormal, but also support to families. And there is, in terms of the medical aid system of the South African police, there is assistance available. And we also want to call on the families and members. If they're under pressure, if there is issues that, of medical or psychological nature, they should really seek help. And not resort to action that might endanger their families and other members of the South African police.
Francois, my final question to you is station commanders. They are perhaps one of the most important aspects of this conversation. You're having the public hearings on the current rural safety strategy. You've got the stats in front of you. The station commanders that are not doing a good job and that are not available for their communities, will they be there? Are they going to be a part of this discussion? Will they be held accountable for not doing enough to protect their communities?
Well, that's one issue that the Portfolio Committee on Police have raised during this parliamentary term very sharply. We believe that there should be consequent management. If station commanders do not perform, there should be consequences. They must be replaced. And there's a lot of underperforming stations where the role of the station commander is quite, critical. And we believe there should be the necessary training, but also constant monitoring of the performance management system to ensure that if a station commander is not up to it, there should be the necessary support. But if that station commander is not fit for purpose, there must be replacements, because a station commander is really the most important player in terms of ensuring that police services is delivered at local level.
All right, we're happy to hear that. Francois, thank you very much for talking to us. Francois Beukman is the Portfolio Committee, is the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Police. They are going to be today holding public hearings on the current rural safety strategy of the SAPS. Let's take a break. We'll have your news after this. Stay